So I wrote this document. The whole purpose was to try to come up with a standard way, because I had done some JavaScript before. I had worked with like a Google Maps library, but I really didn't know everything. Every time I did it was different, and there were different methods. So this was my first attempt. I have it's just a FileMaker field with some HTML in it, and then we have some placeholders in text in here that is substituting that placeholder text. Well, that will eventually be replaced with the actual CSS or JavaScript in that case, in whatever case. So then this web viewer runs on a calculation field. So this was my attempt to really understand a main process for working with JavaScript in FileMaker. Didn't really know what I was doing back then. And honestly, the way that I did it back here made it really tough. Here's the JavaScript, and it's just like, there's just no format. I mean, all this formatting is fake. So it was pretty awful to work with and try to fix mistakes and such. So 2017 is when I did this. I spoke at DevCon. Actually, it was 2016 that I wrote this. I spoke at DevCon in 2017 on this. And then, so I've been pretty much thinking about JavaScript and FileMaker for pretty much that time. I decided that this is a good way to focus on something in FileMaker, not worry about every single technique and just focus on one of the techniques. So then I moved to Geist Interactive, became an evangelist there, talked a lot about FileMaker and JavaScript. In fact, at Proofgeist, if you go to their blog and do a search, hey there, Don, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. If you type in JavaScript in here, there's probably hundreds of there's many different posts about JavaScript. So here's something about my training day. Hey, Fabio, welcome.
That's how I actually came to you, Jeremy, for doing the Gantt chart. I knew you before that, but the posts in there, you had one as far as putting a whole bunch of stuff into FileMaker out of JavaScript, and one of those actually was the Gantt chart in there.
Oh,
you had a sample of a Gantt chart in there.
So this has been my evolution, and then I realized, Todd Geist and I worked on the FileMaker 19 add-ons. We built those for Claris, and I realized that there is a really good way to write. I did this whole, man, I put a lot of time into this. I wrote a lot about JavaScript back then. I actually did this. So I did a training day at DevCon 2 years in a row, and it was okay. It was okay. The first year was worse than the second year, because the first year they gave me only half a day, and there were like 250 people in there. And and FileMaker 16 back then was pretty awful with the web viewer and JavaScript. I was able to do it singly, but trying to help 250 people in a half a day do anything comprehensible was pretty awful. So then in 2019, I did another training course, and I did better, where over here on the left, I have a web viewer where we can write our code and we get a little bit more formatting. And then on the right, there's a web viewer that displays the stuff, but that wasn't perfect. So then I realized after working with Todd that there's a better way to write JavaScript, not this way, but actually use a code editor. And that's, Hugo, that's what we're going to do when we start in a couple of weeks. And what I'm doing with all my training groups is working with VS Code on one side, working with FileMaker on the other side, and letting the two connect to each other. So doing an npm start, and then whatever I do over here in FileMaker, let's see, that's why, because whatever I do over here in the JavaScript, so if I change the chart type to pi, then it immediately reflects over there in the FileMaker web viewer. And the whole purpose of this, I'll go over, when we're together mostly, but it's really just writing the most efficiently. And then when we're done with the writing, we can deploy this code so that the web viewer here can work. Right now, the web viewer is when I'm out of development mode, it will pull from this HTML field and it'll display that HTML. And so once I'm done deploying or working over here, I can do a deploy npm run build : upload, and it will take all this code and it will package it up. And then it will push it over to here to this HTML field where my web viewer is going to pull the code from. So now it's workable offline. And I'm not in dev mode. I don't have to have this open to work. So this is where I've evolved, and this is like where I will stay, probably. I'd be interested. Sam, I think you're doing something like this. Fabio, I'm curious how you develop in JavaScript for FileMaker, but this is where I've started or ended, and probably where I'll stay for a long time. So.
Hi, Jeremy. Yes, I mean, just starting play around with JavaScript.
Okay.
It's pretty interesting. I mean, very interesting to understand what package are you using, which is your workflow. So yeah, this is the first time that I'm attending to your session.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you saw it and jumped in. This is what I do in every session. This is what my community is built around, is this sort of environment. And in my training sessions, I've done this in other user groups too. I talk about the benefits of this and how useful it is. One key that people ask me about is, okay, you're doing this work in this development file. That's really great. But what if you have an actual file that you want to work with? So I have a video on this, but it's actually a pretty simple mechanism to take what I'm doing here and actually hook it up to a real life file. So this is my file where I am writing out the content. I'm planning the training courses. I've actually got another course in the works on data tables. But this is where I plan things out. So if I wanted to put a chart or something in here, I could easily hook up this real life app with the development environment so that I can be developing over here in the VS Code and see it working well with FileMaker, with actual FileMaker data. So that's really great. And when I work with clients, like I had Don there asked me to build him a Gantt chart. He gave me access to his real file, and I connected the code that I was working with the Gantt chart and his file together so that they'll interact. And when I'm ready to deploy it, in fact, Don has done this a couple of times in the recent past. He said, "Hey, Jeremy, can we fix this? Can we fix this?" So I say, "Sure." I open up the repository that's here, that's for Don's Gantt chart. I make a change, I run that process, and it re-uploads the code to Don's file, and then it's ready for his users to use. So that's what I do here, and that's where I'm going. But it all started back, to answer your question, it all started back in 2017 when I was bored or 16 when I was trying to figure out how to work with JavaScript in FileMaker. So I didn't even know JavaScript back then. So I started studying it and started trying to figure it out. But what I came away understanding is that it's gone. Oh, actually, well, this is a bad image. I need to replace it. But what I came to understand is that a FileMaker developer doesn't need to know everything about JavaScript, but she definitely needs to know some things. And those things are the things that I'm using every single day. So I can create a learning path for people, for FileMaker developers to learn JavaScript. And that's what, that's what I'm doing in my training course to some extent and so forth. So we don't need to know everything about JavaScript, but here are the things that we can learn in order to be successful all the time, or be successful. Let's see if I can find that image. So yeah, this might be this is a little bit better image of it. It's not really, I need to reconstruct this, but things like performing actions, we do that all the time in FileMaker. Here is the JavaScript way to do it. So if you wanted to go on your own and learn, you could study this stuff and understand how to do things in FileMaker. Manipulating data is a big one, which I did in last week's office hours, and I'm going to do a little bit of here. So here are the JavaScript ways that we can manipulate data. So like if you take an array and you want to reconfigure it, there are many methods in JavaScript that help us to do that. So yeah, so this is kind of where I'm at. And as people are interested in learning JavaScript for FileMaker, my course is one of them. In fact, my course is the only one. There are many people who are teaching JavaScript for FileMaker, maybe in an isolated setting, maybe a data tables kind of thing. But I'm actually trying to lead people through a good understanding of it. So, this current course is listed here, and it's just talking about how to set up the environment, how to work with JavaScript libraries, getting data into the JavaScript, getting data out of the JavaScript, back into FileMaker, and so forth. So yeah, this is, I think, so far, people seem to be interested in it. The group that I'm working with right now is very enthusiastic, and they keep asking lots of good questions, and it's just a lot of fun. So Hugo, if you're the only one in the June course, you're gonna have to ask a ton of questions.
I meant when I booked your course, Jeremy, I mentioned it to my old boss. I don't know if you've ever met him, Ben Fletcher at Data Therapy in London, and he said he remembers going to one of your DevCon talks. So,
yeah.
So I don't know if I'll persuade him that quickly to join you, but I've at least tried.
Okay, well, you have that connection. So Sam said he joined. Yeah, Sam was in the 2019 session, and then he said so you're using, let's see, I have tried to use insert text.
That's similar to you. I follow all your videos you post on Kaizen Interactive. Just substitute the CSS and JavaScript group with some special character.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have tried you insert text script step and also a text box, and then you introduce this environment. I think I will follow this one in my future development.
That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
That's good. If nothing else, that's why my whole business is around this, is just focusing on JavaScript and FileMaker. I have nothing to do with server or anything. All I'm going to do is focus on JavaScript. So yeah, it's fun to look back at what I had done before, but I'm actually a little embarrassed because, not embarrassed, but it's just like, it's old stuff now, and there's much better ways to use JavaScript and FileMaker. This is, Hugo, this is what we're going to do, something like this. It'll look nicer, but we're going to build a data table in the course. And we're going to put data into it from 2 different data sources. So that's one of the things. And then, like I was showing here, we're going to create a chart and work with a charting library as well. So yeah, lots of fun. It's interesting, and being that I'm a former teacher, it helps me to. It's fun to help people get through this. I'm not interested in like teaching the best new stuff. Like, I don't know, like whatever is the newest stuff out there. I have no interest in trying to teach people that. I'm interested in just this right now, helping people do it. So, and one of the last sessions, I had a person from Australia and a person from here in the States somewhere, Colorado actually, and they both had been in FileMaker for 30 years, but they felt like they needed to learn some JavaScript so that they don't miss out, and so that they, because they do see the writing on the wall too, or they do understand that it's an important part of the platform. So, yeah, lots of fun. It keeps me energized, keeps me excited. It's also frustrating because JavaScript can get really frustrating. So, yeah. How about you, Hugo? Have you done much JavaScript stuff?
No, no, I haven't, Jeremy. I've played around with various languages for various reasons at various times. I was actually just thinking to ask you whether you've scripted the creation of JavaScript code like this, just because, you know, probably a lot of people do end up scripting queries when they're interrogating APIs, which I do increasingly. And so, yeah, do you do that with the code?
You can
any JavaScript code creation from FileMaker?
You can do it to some extent. And I'll be interested to hear what Sam has to say. Actually, Sam, do you do any like FileMaker generating JavaScript stuff?
Oh,
No.
no.
Yeah, I don't either, because
that's just great add-on.
Yeah, you can only do so much. So let me see here. I'll show you something that we did in the course yesterday. We can only do so much. So this is a JavaScript thing that I built yesterday with the people in the binge group. It's a chart. And it will, bring in data. These are my dogs, me and my partner's dogs, Zelda and Kirby. We got one more, but I didn't include that one in this. And, the data here is coming from FileMaker. So I've got a script that says load data. And if I update this to 730, or let's do 230, since it's actually, no, let's do 730. So if I update that here in the script and then I rerun it, that number has updated because I'm passing the data in. So I can pass data in for sure. I can also pass in a configuration. So right now, I can pass in a configuration. So right now, this is a line chart, but I can go into my script and I can say, I want the type of chart to be a bar. And then I can set that into my, actually I did that. Hugo, this is all stuff that we're gonna play with in a couple of weeks. I'm excited to walk you through it, but we can start with, we can set up a JavaScript, a JSON object that tells the JavaScript what kind of chart it's gonna be. And then when I run this, hopefully it'll work. There we go. So now I have a bar chart. I can come in here and I can update this to donuts. And there we go. So that's about as far as you can go with generating JavaScript from FileMaker. You're not actually generating JavaScript. You're generating configurations, like the type of the chart. You're telling the library what type of chart to render, and I'm passing it in via FileMaker. You could construct, this is it's actually a JavaScript object, but it could be JSON and be fine. You could construct that in FileMaker and pass it in, but you can't, this is a function right here, You can't write a function in FileMaker and then bring it over into JavaScript, because JavaScript will just think it's a string instead of an actual function. So there's a limit, and the JavaScript is built on functions. Functions do this and that. So there's a limitation to what you can generate in FileMaker. So, yep. But I mean, there's plenty of ways around that you can, and I guess I wouldn't worry about generating too much because this code is for this instance of this chart. And if I need a data table or a date picker or something, I'm going to write the code for that in the new environment setting. And then that code is ready for, I can write it for any client. Yeah, so that's kind of the whole point of this. Fabio, you said you're starting to explore it here?
Yes, this year. Maybe I started last year, honestly. I don't know. I still try to find the right tools, the right way to do that integration, this integration with JavaScript and FileMaker. I started with plain JavaScript. Now I'm trying to leverage some React, just because I don't want to deal with the manipulation in plain JavaScript, but I still have some issues sometimes, especially if I want to put maybe more web viewer on the same layout. And yeah, I mean, these are type of issue that I have right now.
Okay. Well, you mentioned React. You mentioned vanilla JavaScript too. That's kind of just a term for just writing JavaScript without a library. Here, I'm using a library called C3. I'm importing it in, and then I'm accessing a function from there. And I'm using that. So as a FileMaker developer, this is what we're going to probably do most of our time. We're going to work with a library that does this function out. I wouldn't want to write this from scratch, mainly because it's already built and I don't know how. But there are some things that we can do that are not library based, and that's part of my course as well, we actually build, I always lose the picture, but in the course, we're going to build a bunch of buttons in the browser. Let's see if I can find something.
Please forgive my ignorance here, Joe. Generally, when you have different libraries in different languages, do those libraries themselves tend to be built in the same language? Like, would this C3 library most likely be written in JavaScript, or it varies from library to library and you wouldn't necessarily know unless you looked into it? Or
most libraries, well, the libraries that I look for are written in JavaScript. So I always type in JavaScript libraries because that's the language I'm working in. There is a flavor of JavaScript called React. It's a framework more so than a language. It's JavaScript, but it's reconfigured a little bit differently. So this C3 library has a JavaScript version and it has a React version. And you can use one or the other. You just have to use it in the proper context. Like, this is just JavaScript right here. A React-based library has other things you have to put around it to make it work.
So I assume use a library, I assume they have to be able to rely on being able to run it in whatever environment they're using the library, right? So I guess normally it will be in the same language, but do you know whether if you use a C3 library, for example, typically you can go in and see that code and potentially modify it if you need to or want to? That's quite standard practice.
Yeah, it's not standard practice. You could do it. I would never touch the underlying code, mainly because when I look at it, I can't read it. I don't know what any of this is. A minimum min version of a library. There's no spaces, and the computer has removed anything resembling of like variable names or anything. So I would never touch this, but the author of this library gives us ways to change it, and that's in the form of those options. So these options are things that I pass in. It's like a script parameter in FileMaker. I'm passing it in to tell the JavaScript what kind of chart to draw, what the data is, how high it can be. If I put 1500 and I run this, oh, that's a width. If I do 1000, so I'm getting, I'm able to change it programmatically with the options there. But the libraries are meant to be used and not ever looked at, if that makes sense. And we won't do any adjustments of it in the course. That's right, Sam. You said you could create a template of a bar chart or of a charting library like this, and then you could use this for hundreds of clients that you have, for sure. If you're working with the same client, and you could take this same web viewer and install it in 25 different places using the same code base and just passing in new data and a new chart type and maybe new colors. And the chart will be completely different, even though you're using the same code. So I could take this web viewer, and that's part of what we'll do in the course as well. I can take this web viewer that's working with the code. Actually, let me quickly deploy this. npm run build build upload. I could run this, let it build. So this code base, this code is right here. It's ready for me to use. And once I plop this into a customer's file, I could use this same web viewer anywhere and just give it different data. So that's pretty damn cool in my opinion. And we talk about that in the course as well. And I actually think I did that once on my YouTube channel. There's a office hours. I'll have to find it, but I have an office hours where I demonstrate that, and I demonstrate how to use two different web viewers on the same layout and so forth. So yeah, lots of fun and lots of yeah, it's exciting. It's like it's just mind expanding when you know that you can do anything with a web viewer. What else? What other questions you got? I have no problem with any kinds of questions. There we go. There we go. All right. What else? So wait, what happened here? Oh, this is the one I did yesterday with the team. Okay. I was going to try to show a different example, but I don't seem, it's on one of my hard drives, which is not plugged into my machine right now.
I have a question regarding the build version. So what happens if your build version is huge? I mean, when you generate the build version and you upload the file on your FileMaker field.
Yep.
And the code generated using the build command create this big chunk of text. And in some situation, you have 1 megabyte or 2 megabytes of size of this file. And you have to, I mean, every time your solution needs to interact with the web viewer, it has to pull this big chunk of text from the file invoke the container, invoke the web viewer, and then start, for example, the charts in this case, or other things? So how do you deal with this situation where the file generated is huge?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't had to deal with it. Let's just look at this. I don't actually know how to I guess I could export the text. So if I did a length of this field.
Oh, I mean, you can just click on the VS Code file and see.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, right. So
yeah,
it's right here in the
show
folder.
Showing revealing Finder.
There it is.
Yeah.
So that's 1.3 megabytes.
Okay.
And granted, this is local right now, but honestly, I haven't had to deal with it. And there's a couple of reasons why. I think. I mean, the add-ons that we built are much bigger than this, and no one has ever complained that those things don't load even on hosted files. They may complain about other parts of them, but not that. What I'm doing here is in line 6, I'm getting the HTML from that field when I'm not in dev mode, or in this case, I am in dev mode. And then I'm clearing out the web viewer. Then I'm reloading the web viewer, and I'm pausing for half a second. And we have found that loads all of the code without fail. I just haven't had any issues. Back when I worked at Proofgeist, we were building whole React-based layouts and navigation systems for a web viewer in WebDirect, and didn't have any problems with it loading. So I don't think I've ever had to deal with it. I've never found that it's been an issue.
So you are using a pause basically, and at second, do you think that it is enough?
Yeah, it's necessary for. It seems to be necessary to give the web viewer a chance to breathe and to kind of make sure all the code is loaded in there. It's just what I put in standard, and I actually never notice a half a second worth of wait time.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. So yeah, it's I feel like Matt Petrowski, he does some JavaScript stuff too, and he has a little bit of a different method for storing the code than in a field. He uses a layout object instead of a field. I
saw that. It's old techniques to basically store the code as a label in your FileMaker layout, and assign an object name to it, and use the get object to pull the source code. Yes, but I mean, I prefer your approach where you just press a button in your VS Code and you get the new code updated in
That's
FileMaker.
Right. And this becomes my configuration, because if a client says, here's a great advantage, and this is what Don was doing for me. He was saying, all right, this looks beautiful. I'll just pretend it's him. This looks beautiful, but I want the colors to be something else. So I can go in here. I can, this is what people are seeing right now. They're seeing the blue and the orange. I can go to the C3 documentation, which I'll pull up over here. I can go there. I can go to the reference guide and find the colors, which is, it's actually, I'm going to do this, data.colors. So he says, all right, Jeremy, I want Zelda to be purple and Kirby to be, blue, or I don't know, some color. So I can easily update that. I'm going to go to actually, I like to use Adobe Color to pick nice looking colors. We'll pick Explorer. Sorry, I'm wasting my time here. Let's just say the client's colors are these here. So they'll say, I want one of the data sets to be this maroon and the other to be this green. So I can copy that and go into here and update a configuration. It is. Oh, sorry, it's one colors. I'll just use that color dot pattern. So color, and then actually, is it that? Yep. Pattern, and then I can put in that value, and we'll just use this one. Looks nicer, and this value here. I'm gonna test it in my development environment. Yep, that's exactly what the client wants. So when I'm done, I can redeploy this in a heartbeat. I can run that code again, npm run build upload. And that code with the new colors has been deployed. So if I quit VS Code, I'm not using it anymore, I have a new configuration. And it took me 5 minutes to make a change based on what the client wanted. So that's what I like about this environment, you know. So
but yeah, interesting. But you can also pass the entire object to your C3.generate function. I mean, everything.
Could 100% do that. I could push this. I could put this into the FileMaker file as a color pattern, and just do that. Hard code it for now. That won't work.
Backslash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'll just do that color pattern. I'll do that, and then do backslash.
Insert text.
I could do insert text
exactly.
too. Yep. So let's do that. Hopefully that'll work.
Yeah.
Should. Okay. And then I just add that to my JSON. So JSON color pattern. Color pattern. It's an array.
Because in this way you keep a simple JavaScript code and you have FileMaker. I mean, you can customize from FileMaker.
Yep. And then I can bring that into there. So now when I run this in VS Code, or when I run it in development, it no longer has hard-coded colors. All the colors will come from FileMaker. So if I did it right, that's good. And then I can go back and change it to this color instead. So now I'm going to do, I don't know which one this was, but do that. Wait, did I? That. Okay, so it should.
Oh, dev mode. You are not in dev mode.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. There we go. So I was able to update it, and now I can deploy it. npm. Now outside of dev mode, I can give my users like a color palette to choose from if they want it. And rather than just hard coding them in there, so I give them some user interface, I collect that information. And so now that I can update the colors any old time I want. So that's beautiful. It's the development environment becomes a configuration. And then when I deploy it, I can use that configuration anytime. So that's great. Wonderful. Well, this is great. It's a great conversation to have. I don't mind sharing it. I know Don may have heard this many times and Sam too, but I'm glad you're here and I can introduce this to others. And yeah, I spend every day of my work day life now in VS Code, in FileMaker, and working to make this better. And what I want to do is, this is a little bit advanced, but what I would like to do is, so the way that people get this, and again, Hugo, we're going to do this in the course, is we're going to go to GitHub, and I've got on my Integrating Magic site, I have got, no, that's my actual site. If I go to my organization, Integrating Magic, I have the JS Dev Environment. This is a template. That's what this whole thing is, this VS Code, the file structure, and this FileMaker file. And people can copy this as a template in their own set. So new chart for client A, and then I can start and build a chart mechanism for a chart widget for my client. So we always can start from this template, and then it's always got the setup all ready to go, and we do some other things to it. So Hugo, since you're part of that course, and anybody else actually, I do have instructions on how to set it up. That's right here. I also have and I'll give this to everybody, but I have a video that I've done that's called Setting Up the JS Dev Environment. I don't need to play it here. I'll chat it to everybody. It describes how to set it up. And so far, people who have followed that have actually done really well with it. So there's that, and there's that. So yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's good for today. Does anybody happy to stay and talk about talk more questions if you have them, or more thoughts about this? Hugo, does this look overwhelming to you?
No, this all looks good. Thanks, Jeremy. All looks great. Will be good to see him in more detail over the coming weeks.
Yep. Great. Fabio, I'm glad you're here. Glad you joined. I hope to see you some other times here. I know, we're all busy, but it's good to get more people involved in talking about JavaScript. So I'm always happy for it. So, Don, how about you? Any thoughts? You're just plugging away at large fires right now?
Yeah, actually, I'm toying with a deal. Somebody else is trying to build out a small data warehouse type of a deal using Microsoft Access.
Okay.
And he's run into all kinds of problems with data sizes and everything else with it, where it's just dying. And the idea is to actually build it out in FileMaker eventually, but I just haven't had the time. So I just took the largest file that he had, which contains about 180,000 records, that he was having problems having it import properly into Access. It kept stalling out on him. And in 5 minutes, had the entire thing built and uploaded into here without any issues whatsoever. So the Access stuff he's building is going to get retired real quick and everything moved over.
Great.
So
very good.
And then this is something that I may get you involved with some of the pieces here too, but it's basically a data warehouse for a bunch of BI reporting. Mm-hmm. And going out to Power BI and stuff, but may end up doing some of it with some of the graphic JavaScript libraries and that too, and maybe data tables.
Cool. Wow. I'm teaching more people how to use data tables. So, you know, there'll be more people to choose from to do this work, but I'm putting myself out.
And I mean, I do definitely want to come through the class. I just, until I can offload some of the stuff I'm doing right now, I do not have spare time. I mean,
join Hugo in June.
I get up at 5 o'clock every morning, and last night I didn't go to bed until close to 2 a.m. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You do need to offload some stuff. So wonderful. I mean, not wonderful, but cool, everyone. Well, it's good to have you here. I'm glad everybody joined. I love having new people each week. So we'll I'll keep bringing people into the fold and converting them to using JavaScript and FileMaker more and more. So,
Good.
All right.
So you're gonna have to change the name of this whole thing because, you know, with Claris going over to just the Claris name,
yeah,
getting rid of FileMaker's name. I mean, you know, your whole thing is going to have to change here, Jeremy.
I already bought the domain JS in CP, so we're good. I'm good. But yes, you're right. After all this work I put into it with logos and all this stuff, I have to change everything soon. We'll see. No. All right, folks, we'll call it good.
Thank you again, Jeremy.
Some of you can go to bed. The others can get started in your workday. So,
yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
See you next
Bye.
week.
Bye, everyone.